My name is Delaney Reagan, and I chose to do my ethnography project on bluegrass music. To start off, I just want to kind of define bluegrass a little bit. I'll get more into the history later. But yeah, just to give you a rough idea, it is a musical style that includes the fiddle, the mandolin, the banjo, the guitar, and the upright bass. And yeah, it can include other instruments as well, but those are primarily bluegrass instruments. Yeah, and kind of moving into my research and what I was looking into regarding bluegrass. Yeah, my research questions were: how do the unique instruments play a role in shaping the culture of bluegrass? What value do bluegrass musicians find and fans find in this style of music? And yeah, to kind of give you an overview of my whole project, I'll share my thesis. Yeah, and I was I came to the conclusion that bluegrass is a unique genre because it really plays on emotion, which is projected by the acoustic string instruments. And fans can really relate to this deeply and really make bluegrass a lifestyle, is what I found. The things I did for my field site was I attended a Dead South concert, which is a bluegrass band. I also observed a new local bluegrass band during their practice, and I also interviewed two bluegrass musicians in order to get just a better perspective on bluegrass fans and bluegrass musicians. Now I just want to get into the history of bluegrass. So basically, the banjo was brought over from West Africa during the slave trade, and white Americans basically just took the banjo and put it into their own style of music. This was mostly in the Appalachian region of the U.S., and most bluegrass songs are old folk songs from England, Scotland, and various African countries. Yeah, so it's basically different musical styles with different lyrics that very much come from raw emotion and just oppression and things that these people were feeling at the time. And this kind of has been true to bluegrass today, just really playing off that emotion and the banjo and acoustic instruments. So just diving more into the history of bluegrass, bluegrass actually spread from the Appalachian region across the U.S. and to other parts of the world. One of these reasons why it spread was because of just industrialization, and we needed more workers in urban areas. So people who were around bluegrass due to maybe their slaves or just for family bands in these pocket of the Appalachian regions, they left their hometown, went to the cities, and that's where bluegrass spread. People became more aware of it, and it impacted folk music and the rest of music history as well. It definitely has a big role in rock and roll and other types of blues and jazz. So it kind of spread as the people left. So now that we know kind of the broader scope of the bluegrass history and the cultural context, we kind of have to ask ourselves, where does my research fit into this, this whole history and culture? And yeah, I do have to say that I did only study modern day bluegrass music, so my research can't really encompass the entirety of bluegrass history or the culture. It can, I guess, show a small part of it, but it can't really be taken with much weight, honestly, if we're going to be fair to the whole history and culture. In this topic, honestly, was hard to find sources for because there really wasn't much research on bluegrass music and the culture surrounding bluegrass music. I was able to find more on folk or country, but not really on bluegrass. To understand the heart of bluegrass more, we have to talk about the common bluegrass instruments that are used. So the first instrument is the banjo. That is the one on the very left. The one next to that is the mandolin. And the one following the mandolin is the fiddle. And the very last one on the right is the stand-up bass. And these are very common bluegrass instruments associated with the genre. As I have gotten to research bluegrass My perspective of bluegrass is that it is a welcoming community that loves this style of music. Yeah, bluegrass is unique because of the people who listen to it respect the genre. In the spaces I was around bluegrass, I heard laughter, music of course, shouting, clapping, cheering, and joy. The environment I was in, or the environments I was in, were warm and people were excited to have me there. It was very welcoming. Now I want to talk about my interview with Nathan, and he is a banjo player and bluegrass musician. He has been playing the banjo for 5 years now, and I just interviewed him to get more insight on a musician's perspective of bluegrass culture. The first question I asked him was, how has bluegrass impacted your life? He answered, bluegrass has challenged my musicianship. It has brought me frustration, but out of that has been improvement. Bluegrass has comforted me in painful and hard times. It has brought me joy on good days. And I put this in there just to kind of highlight that bluegrass musicians do find comfort in their musicianship and that it does challenge them. And Nathan really does find part of his identity in this music. So yeah, just showing my audience that bluegrass musicians do have their own culture and they do play a part in the bluegrass culture as a whole. Another question I asked him was, what would you want outsiders to understand about bluegrass? His answer was, it is beautiful. It is more than country. Bluegrass has some of the most talented musicians. It is an art that people should give a chance. And the next interview I did was with Emily. She plays the fiddle. So the questions I asked her were, what aspects of bluegrass do you live out in your daily life? And her answer was, wow, bluegrass has taught me so much about being a musician. Like to go with the flow, but also to be dedicated. I like to think I lived those things out in my life. End quote. Yeah, and I think that this is just a cool display of how bluegrass really is a culture and people really do live this out as a culture. The next question was, what do you want outsiders to understand about bluegrass? Her answer was, I wish people understood the beauty in the music. People think it's country, but it really isn't. It's a beautiful musical genre. I wish people could see the excitement and fun in bluegrass. It is a life-giving style of music. End quote. Yeah, and like I said before, this is similar to Nathan's answer. And yeah, I interviewed them separately, so it's very interesting to see that they did have similar answers. So yeah, these interviews really just gave me some new light on bluegrass, especially coming from musicians, where they, it's more than, yeah, like I said, just a 3-minute song. Like they pour their lives into this musical genre. Diving more into my concert experience, I just want to kind of explain what that looked like and what happened there. So I did see the Dead South in concert in Fort Collins at the Aggie Theater. It was a sold-out show, so it was very packed inside, and it was a relatively small venue. The crowd was very excited and very friendly. There were equal representation among men and women, from what I could tell. It was mainly white people, also just from a rough judgment. Age-wise, it seemed like most people were 21 to 35. The crowd was drinking mostly beer, and they were dancing during songs. They would also clap and shout when songs were done or after a solo. Basically, the crowd was very friendly, very welcoming and warm. People seemed like they had maybe seen the Dead South before or another bluegrass show. It wasn't awkward and I didn't feel lonely just being by myself. It was a very welcoming crowd that was excited that it was my first bluegrass concert. Next, I want to talk about just the themes of my ethnographic data that I found. And this is really the heart of this project and really why we are doing this, is to find themes among people and to be able to observe and gather ideas from that, about the history, about my experience, why does this matter, what have I found. And yeah, one of the biggest themes that I found in my research was just this general respect for music that the musicians and the fans both had. I really saw this when I was observing the band members in the local bluegrass band. They were very passionate about the music they were playing. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. They practiced with such dedication. They replayed parts they got wrong until they got it right, but they were still laughing and joking with one another. The band members were enjoying themselves. And also, they really knew their music. So it wasn't just kind of this thrown together band. Like, they really respected their instruments and the music that they were generating. Yeah, and another just evidence of the respect for music that I found was during the interviews with the bluegrass musicians. I noticed that both Nathan and Emily were very excited to talk about bluegrass. They were almost honored that I asked to interview them, which was really special because it made the interview process easy. But they both mentioned how it just changed their lives for the better. And as far as the Dead South concert goes, the musicians were very energetic. Kind of like I've already mentioned, they were passionate about the music they were playing. They also connected well with the crowd over this kind of mutual respect for music. The crowd was they were energetic, and Dead South was too, and just, it was almost this harmony of music lovers, bluegrass lovers coming together and just sharing that love, even as an outsider who didn't necessarily understand why they had this respect for bluegrass, but I definitely could tell that they did. So another point in my ethnographic data was just this open musical community is really a huge theme I saw across all of my experiences and all my research was just this openness. For example, like at the Dead South concert, the fans were very friendly and talkative. A few chatted with me outside the venue, and they talked about how excited they were for the show. And even though it was my first bluegrass concert, like, they were so excited that I got to experience that. During the interviews with Nathan and Emily, I noticed both of them wanted other people to love bluegrass music too. And yeah, you could kind of see that in the questions I asked them. They really wanted people to see the beauty in bluegrass and just see how it was different. They really welcomed in new fans of bluegrass, people to understand bluegrass the way they do. And just grow the community that they are in. So it wasn't like exclusive or very insistent on new people being welcome into this community that they have. To talk about just the main points of my research and my findings. Bluegrass is a complex genre that has become a culture and community for many people, including fans and musicians. It's a culture that I by no means understand completely just by doing this research because, it's very complex and I can't exactly learn everything just by doing 6 hours of observation. So just to keep that in mind as well. The unique instruments draw fans into this style of music because it is unlike anything else. These instruments are very unique, and that draws people's attention and gets them just excited about the music. Also, fans and musicians find beauty, fun, and life in this style of music. So it's not just something to listen to, but it is very much a lifestyle, and it's a way for musicians to grow and to push themselves. It's a way for fans to connect with one another and connect with just this raw emotion that bluegrass really has to offer through its acoustic string instruments and through just the history of bluegrass is so drawn on emotion. And from those old folk songs, that are passed down, that really is the essence of bluegrass, is just human emotion and what people are going through. And yeah, so that is still very much prevalent today. And with that being said, musicians and fans have a high level of respect for this genre, as I mentioned earlier in my themes. Yeah, and also the bluegrass community is open and inclusive. It very much is so. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of end with these points as being the main takeaway from my research.